Hello everyone. First of all, I am Rituraj Singh. I am an independent Indic researcher and an author to the book Art and Invasion Theory: The Truth of Colonial Hegemony and Leftist Dogma. Currently, I am in my undergraduate. I am pursuing my undergraduation from economics honors. So here I am presenting my research on antiquity of the Indian civilization. So Indian civilization, as you all know, is one of the oldest civilization of this world. But what I am here presenting is that Indian civilization is not only one of the oldest civilization on the world, but also it is one of the most advanced civilization. And not only that, Indian civilization grew up indigenously on the Indian subcontinent and was not uh, grown as a result of some migration from Africa or through the steppe route in the Central Asian region. So starting with my research, first of all, I would like to tell all of you that what is the out of Africa migration theory. So for a longer time, it was believed that all of the human species, whether it was Homo sapiens or it was the Homo erectus or it was the Neanderthals or any other archaic human species, all of those human species were originated in the African continent. And those all of those whichever human species, they tried to migrate from the African continent to the outwards. But contradictory is that besides the Homo sapiens, no single human species, no any single archaic human species was able to make it out of the African continent. Only the Homo sapiens were the first to set foot out of the African continent to the Middle East for the first time. Now, first of all, this thing is a little bit contradictory because we all know that we are told that all the human species before the Homo sapiens, they were hunter gatherers, they were the nomadic people, and being nomadic, they settle down at a place in search of food or shelter or water. And at that time, millions or thousands and millions of years ago, there was the African continent was filled with plenty of water and food and shelter for all of them. So traveling from one place to another, traveling from all the way from Africa down to the Europe, the Central Asian region, the Indian subcontinent region, the Pacific region, and then to the then to the American continents, doesn't sound so convincing. But here we are. First of all, regarding the migrations, there is one example that first of all, it was believed that the Homo sapiens, which according to the older theory, the older out of Africa migration theory, the Homo sapiens, they started their migration from northern Africa. They reached the Middle East, and then via the steppe route, they and the Khyber Bolan passes in the Central Asian region, they came to the Indian subcontinent around 65 to 70,000 years ago. And from there, they traveled all the way to Southeast Asia, and then they reached the Australian continent. They reached there around 25 to 30,000 years ago. This was the older theory. But then this is the new theory. So there was something like, here is it. The older theory believed that around 25 to 30,000 years ago, the Homo sapiens reached Australia. But then genetic data in the Australia and Southern America, they showed genetics data that trail from India to Southern America. And the data from archaeology showed human presence in Southern America as early as 35,000 years ago. There are some regions, as you can see it, in Piedra Pintata and in the Monte Verde and in the Santa Elena. There are some archaeological data which are more ancient than one another. And then there is the Australian continent, where now first of all, the genetic trails which were found in Australia as well as in Southern America, there were some of the genetic trails were similar to the genetic data from India. So this was first of all in the Southern America. It was believed that around 15 to 20,000 years ago, the Homo sapiens first arrived in the South American continent. But then after a few researches and many more new upcomings, uh, this was the new theory that the humans arrived in the Australia around 65,000 years ago, and from there they traveled down to South America and Northern America thereafter. Now here is it. Why were we talking about India? Now, when talking about India, we see that at presently the theory is that around 100,000 years ago, that is around the Homo sapiens first visited India, the first arrived in India, and thereafter they settled down at different places and start agriculture and different thing. Now, what do we mean by civilization at first? So civilization is a thing when a group of humans start living as a community. They develop their own shelters, they start agriculture or farming. So this type of community or this type of a settlement is can be termed as a civilization. We cannot say that it is a much advanced civilization, but however we can say that yes, it is a civilization. When it starts agriculture, it settles down at one place, all of that. Now here is it. First of all, there is a site of there is a Paleolithic site at Atirampakkam in India. There are the phytoliths which indicated the quaternary vegetation in Atirampakkam, India. There is a paper by Ratnasri Premathilake and Kumar Akhilesh. They presented this paper and they say that within the age bracket of 1 million to 1.7 million years ago, during the Acheulean occupation, they received phytoliths which were artifacts which which indicated the quaternary deposits in trenches. Yeah, these deposits were found in the trenches, and these phytoliths indicated quaternary vegetation at the Paleolithic site. And what was this vegetation? So this vegetation was I have underlined it. This vegetation was Oriza rice. So this was a wild rice which was found at that places, and this occurred as annual or perennial components of vegetation in this area. What is a perennial component? So perennial is what that is supported by water. So here in this region, at this Paleolithic site, wild rice used to grow around 1 to 1.7 million years ago. And this is much older than any of the date that any other historian or any other researchers claim. This is very much older than any of the other civilization or any of the such indications found regarding the human occupation in India. This is very ancient. So the quaternary vegetation of wild rice in India dates back to indicate the indications of quaternary vegetation in India of wild rice dates back to around 1 to 1.7 million years ago. Now here is other thing, not only in India, around Kerala, at other place in Sri Lanka, that is nearby Kerala, in the Indian subcontinent, there were in the late Pleistocene period, there were evidences of harvesting. We cannot say that there are evidences of clear agriculture, but there were evidences of harvesting of crops in the Sri Lankan region. So this is also a paper which dates back to in this. Yeah, this is in the Fayan rock shelter region of Sri Lanka. This is a region supported by the southwestern monsoon. So in the Fayan rock shelter in Sri Lanka, there were evidences of harvesting of crops around the same period, like around 40 to 50,000 years ago. There were these evidences of harvesting of crops. There were not empirical evidence of agriculture or the crops were sown or not, but harvesting of crops, yes, there were clear evidence of it. And then it is here, the Bhimbetka rock shelter. The Bhimbetka rock shelter, as we all know, is a very ancient site in India, and the Bhimbetka rock shelter has a continuous, has evidence of continuous human occupation of from around 1,000 years ago in the Paleolithic period to recently 10,000 years ago. Now, since agriculture is, as I say, agriculture is one of the most important thing and that is considered of being a civilization. So that is a thing that around that time, whether India, whether their agriculture was possible in India or not. So the oldest sign of agriculture, the empirical evidence of agriculture is found in India around 12,000 years ago in the Lahore Deva site. We all know that in the Lahore Deva site, but by at that time in the when agriculture was being done in India, some claim that the ice age, the last glacial maximum, made could not be the agriculture in the Indian subcontinent could not be possible during the last glacial maximum. But here is a global peak of the last glacial maximum, and here you can see it. In the polar region and in the region around Tibetan plateau, there were ice caps, ice was everywhere. But in the Indian region, there were green fields and agriculture was obviously possible in the region. And here is the evidence of it. This is a vegetation of the last glacial maximum, that which type of vegetation occurred at which places during the peak of the last glacial maximum. So here you can see it. Here in India, there were tropical grasslands. In the Indian subcontinent, there were tropical grasslands. In the end, some say that the agriculture came into India from either the Iranian route or the Tibetan Burman route. So you can say it, see it during the last glacial maximum. The Iranian plateau, there the region was the tropical semi-desert vegetation, and in the Tibetan Burman region, there were the tundra vegetation, the polar and alpine desert, and in the region of Burma, there was the semi-arid temperature. There was woodland or there were scrubs. In the Indian only, there was the tropical grassland type of vegetation, which made agriculture very much possible. And there is it again. Now, what is it? This is a map of the migration of mouse. Now, why are we talking about the migration of mouse? Here we were talking about the human civilization. So there is not only humans, mice. The domestic mouse is associated with the migration of human, like where a mice grow, where mice lives. So there is it, wherever agriculture grow, when we grow crops, we store the crops, mice came. Obviously there is a breeding place, there is a suitable breeding place for mouse. And here is the evidence. What were the mouse species that traveled down across the whole world from the Indian subcontinent? So you can see it in the Indian subcontinent around 30 to 35,000 years ago. Most of the mice species lived in the Indian subcontinent around 30 to 35,000 years ago, and they traveled down through various routes to the whole world after that. So the population of mus musculus, the mus musculus domesticus, and the mus musculus castaneus, these three main types of mice species travel down from the Indian subcontinent to the whole world through three main routes. And you can see it. This is this is the Y chromosomal DNA. So you can see it, the separation, the migration of mouse. This is the evidence. This is the map showing the genomic migration of M17Y chromosome, and this the another map shows the frequency of M17Y chromosome across the various regions. And you can see it here, the expansion time of M17Y chromosome. This time is around 16,000 years ago, 16 to 15,000 years ago. The Y chromosome, the M17Y chromosome, was mainly concentrated around the northwestern side of India, and thereafter it traveled down to whole world. and here is it the same, and then to from Europe, and here is it the same. The frequency of M17Y chromosome is mostly in the Indian subcontinent and thereafter in the European subcontinent. So someone may say it, looking at the frequency of the M17 chromosome, that it is also possible that this chromosome traveled from Europe to the Indian subcontinent, not from the Indian to the European continent, subcontinent, European continent. But the another thing, the expansion time of M17Y chromosome shows is clearly that this chromosomal DNA traveled down from India to the Europe. And here is it. Very detailed and very beautiful diagram prepared by Mrs. Rupa Bhattiji. This shows a total everything, the oceanographic data. This shows the monsoonal pattern. This shows the different species of human, and this also shows the migration of not only the human migration but different events in the Indian civilization. First of all, and also moreover, this shows some of the most epic astronomical events that took place. First of all, there is it, the Toba volcanic eruption. There is a time when in the Rig Veda it is mentioned about the grand Saraswati. So before the 220,000 years ago, the grand Saraswati, we don't actually know how old it was, but we for sure know the grand Saraswati became almost the grand Saraswati lost its existence around 25,000 years ago. 25 to 30,000 years ago. The grand Saraswati was not much in existence. Its grandness was lost. And why was it? It was because the westward movement of the Satluj river and the Yamuna river from the Saraswati basin. So here is it, the Toba volcanic eruption, which took place in around 75,000 years ago, and at a place in Jolapuram in India. There are evidences of human settlements which are older and after and even before the Toba volcanic eruption, which took place in around 75,000 years ago, which covered the almost in the entire subcontinent into ash and made it quite difficult for any human occupation to settle down at that place. So most of the human species, most of that the settlements that were in the Indian subcontinent, they were around the northwestern region, around the after the Toba volcanic eruption, as it is obvious by that. Then it is the wild rice, the Sri Lanka, the wild rice that was found in Sri Lanka, the agricultural evidence that was found in Sri Lanka. This is around 40 to 45,000 years ago. There is the evidence of the harvesting of wild rice in Sri Lankan in the Sri Lankan region. And thereafter, the migration of mice that began in around 20 to 25,000 years ago from India. The migration of mouse from 20 to 25,000 years ago in India. There was the evidences of concentration of the different species of mouse, like the black rat, the Rattus rattus, the mus, as I said, the mus musculus musculus, the mus musculus domesticus, and the mus musculus castaneus. So they travel down from India to other places, and mice migration is not possible without human migration. Mice cannot just travel down to continents on their own. And mice travel from one place to another, what, just in search of food. And when does mouse concentrate at one place? When there are food stored at a place. And there is it before 15,000 BC, around 15,000 BC. There is the empirical evidence of the rice at the site of Laudeva. And then it is the recent period after 10,000 years ago. There was these periods where, and obviously this period around 10,000 years ago, there are empirical archaeological evidences like the site at Mehergarh, the site at Rakhigadi, then the site and then the Bhiranna site, and one of the most important thing are the archaeological sites at Pumpuhar and the Bet Dwarika. So the Bet Dwarika site dates back to around 7,000 12,500 years ago, and the Pumpuhar city in the southern India that is a port that dates back to around 14,500 years ago. Anyone can go and check it on Google. It is available there. And here is it. Before around 12,000 BCE, not only rice but other things like rice, sugarcane, and red ochre, these things were grown. And some of these things like Rath, or the places which were also mentioned in the text of Ramayana. And by this time the fertile crescent appears in India after the last glacial maximum, and the vegetation at that time, which I already showed to you. And these were the time when farming was very much suitable in India. And after that, any evidence of agriculture which are found in the Iranian region or in the Tibeto-Burman region are much older than the evidences of agriculture found in India. And this is the ice age. The upper part shows the ice age and when the monsoonal pattern began in India. So we know that at present the Indian climate is the monsoonal climate, but it was not always that. This is the time when the monsoonal pattern begins in India around before 20,000 years ago. The monsoonal pattern began in India, and after that, sorry, around 12, there was a very turbulent monsoonal pattern. The monsoons were very high and very low at different times. There were a rise in sea levels, and uh, this was a time from 20,000 to 12,000 years ago when there was a peak of ice age. And after the last glacial maximum was ending around 12,000 years before 12,000 years ago, the monsoonal pattern began in India, and also the vegetation in India was very much suitable for agriculture. And also by that time the Indian climate became monsoonal climate, which was also very much suitable for agriculture. And also we find empirical evidences of agriculture of rice, sugar, and other things in India. And also before that there was the evidences of mice migration, and before that we find the evidences of harvesting in the Indian subcontinent. So, and these are some of the links which you can go and read on to. And before I end, this was my presentation, and all the things that I showed in this presentation, all these things convey that the Indian civilization is much older than any of the civilization and predates any such advanced civilization. And advancement of the Indian civilization, we all know that the Indian civilization, the sites at Biranna and Mehergarh, all these shows clear empirical evidences of a much advanced civilization around 10 to 12,000 years ago, which predates any of the other civilization on this planet. And also the civilization, not such advanced, but civilization in common, the civilizational extent of India goes back to more than 50,000 years ago. And this is the thing: the evidences of agriculture, the evidences of harvesting, the migration of mice from one place to another place, the concentration of all the domestic mice species in India, and thereafter the migration of domestic mice from India to the other places, the empirical evidences of agriculture of rice at the sites of Lahore Deva and all, the beginning of monsoonal pattern in India, the suitable vegetation for agriculture in India, and all these things convey that the Indian civilization is very much old than what is told and what we have been taught. So with that being said, thank you. I will wrap up my presentation. Thank you, everyone.